Welcome to our church, El Camino Queens. We are so excited that you are connecting with us. Today, this Sunday, is actually the very first Sunday we're launching our English service. And so we're so excited that you have decided to connect with us, especially in a time like this, from quarantine to coronavirus, to the change that is happening in our country, and not only in our country, but all over the world. And it can cause a lot of stress, a lot of confusion, but I promise you this is the place where you're gonna find hope, you're gonna find love. As a church, we love you. We're here to serve you. We're here to pray with you and for you. And if you want more information about our church, if you want to stay connected with our church, you can always visit our website, elcaminoq.org. There you can find more messages that will encourage your life. I believe the message that the pastor has today will change your life, will touch your heart, and will lift up your spirit. This is a word that we need today, and it's going to be a relevant word for your life today. Thank you for connecting with us. Continue to connect with us and continue to enjoy the message with us, the worship team.
Searching the world, that's what we found. Afraid that we live, that's why we cry out. You carry the cross, you die and rose again. My God, I only ever give my all. You send your son from heaven to earth and deliver us all from eternally hurt. I search for truth, and all I find is you. My God, I only ever give my all. Jesus, we're living for your name. We'll never be ashamed of you. I praise, you know we are today. Take it all, take it all. You send your son from heaven to earth and deliver us all from eternity hurt. I search for truth, and all I find is you. My God, I only ever give my all. Jesus, we're living for your name. We'll never be ashamed of you. Our praise, you know we are today. Take it all, take it all. Jesus, we're living for your name. We'll never be ashamed of you. Our praise, you know we are today. Take it all, take it all. Running to the one who heals the blind, following the shining light, and he has the power to save the world, my life. Running to the one who heals the blind, following the shining light, and he has the power to save the world, my life. Jesus, we're living for your name. We'll never be ashamed of you. Whoa, oh, our praise, and know we are today. Take it all, take it all. Jesus, we're living for your name. We'll never be ashamed of you. Our praise, and know we are today. Take it all, take it all. Jesus, we're living for your name. We'll never be ashamed of you. Our praise, and know we are today. Take it all, take it all, take it all. at your presence, at your throne. And I call, you answer. Oh, and you came to my rescue, and I wanna be where you are. And I call, you answer. And you came to my rescue, and I wanna be where you are. My life be lifted high, in my world be lifted high, in my life be lifted high. In my life be lifted high, in my world be lifted high, in my life be lifted high. And I call, you answer. And you came to my rescue, and I wanna be where you are. And I call, you answer. And you came to my rescue, and I wanna be where you are.
Hey, my name is Victor, and I'm so glad you're online. Today is our first time launching our English service, so we're glad you're here and that you share this message, this service. Today, the experience today, we're starting a new series. This series is called the Upside Down Kingdom. This is the first part of this new series, so I hope this will be of some help in your journey, on your faith. And if you're not a Christian, if you're not a follower of Christ, you're welcome to hear. This is like you coming to where we actually going to talk about a topic that some things that we should do as followers of Christ to better serve you. And just stick around and you will see that we need to become more like Jesus. So today we're going to start off the topic, and I want to just think about with you. Remember when you were, how traumatizing was, how horrible it was, the experience to go to school for the first time or for the first week or the first day of school and determine where you were going to see in the cafeteria, where you were going to sit down in the cafeteria, and with who you were going to sit down. How common was the emotion that you and I had of fear, probably feeling like we were going to be rejected, or if it was, and those days was important back then. I'm talking about a couple of years ago. It was important to see who you were going to sit with and if it was your group. We were hoping not to hear the words like, do not sit here, this seat is taken. We were just afraid and looking for acceptance. And the problem is that, or the reality is that us as human, we surround ourselves with people who likes us. We only like to be around people who actually like us. And we surround ourselves with people who likes us, and we surround ourselves with people who are like us. Not only that likes us, but people who are like us. That they have the same sexual orientation, they have the same race, or their social economic, or the background is the same, the education is the same, the religion is the same, how much money their family has, how little money my family has. We surround ourselves with people that are like us and with people that like us. Unfortunately for us Christians, Jesus doesn't like that. In fact, Jesus he didn't like that. Jesus wouldn't like that. He wasn't like that, and he wouldn't like that you and I to act that way. It's difficult to maintain a relationship with those who disagreed with me. I understand, and I'm honestly telling you, it's hard to actually have a relationship with people that actually disagreed with me. And I know the same is for you. How can you have a discerning view? How can you sit down with someone even when that person has a discerning view? How can you sit on the table with someone that is not looking like you, is not thinking like you? But the reality is, we need to allow people to sit at our table. We need to allow people to spend time with us. We need to allow people to come close to us. And once we do that, everything will change. And one of the things that is now, as we living through these times in this country, not only in the country but in the world, you and I know what's happening now. If you've been in social media the last 10 minutes, you know that the new thing is not about COVID-19. The new normal, it's about what's happening, unfortunately, in our society, how the fight for equality is happening, how the fight for the racism is happening in our country, in our system. It's tough to be in this situation. And even though we're becoming more diverse, our society is becoming more simultaneously divided at the same time. More segmented, polarized, segregated, and balkanized. Even though we're more diverse, we're getting ourselves into little groups. We're treating each other like we're not the same at the end of the day, like we don't have the same father. We're not coming from the same place. According to Bishop, in 1976, less than 25% of America lived in places where the presidential election was a landslide. Basically, in other words, we lived next door to people who held different beliefs than ours. We were ideologically diverse. In contrast, 2016, 80% of the United States counties had the landslide victories. Most of us no longer live near people who are much different from us. In terms and political and social belief, we like to be close to people that believe like us. If you see right now, unfortunately, the country is divided in two parties. The country geographically is divided in the north is this party, the south is this party, and that's why we moved into people that are like us. And Christians, unfortunately, we're terrible at this. Fear drives us into our own bubbles. We get scared. I don't know about why we're scared, but we get scared and we drive ourselves into our own bubbles. We do our thing. We separate ourselves. I don't know if we're trying to look for protection. We are afraid that we're going to become the minority. We are afraid that they're going to call us and that we're going to do the wrong thing. I don't know what is it that is driving us as Christians. We have the fear that to set ourselves apart, to stay away from others. But this message, particularly today, this message is for Christians. So if you're here, if you're online today, and you don't consider yourself a Christian, you and I will agree that this world will be better if we as Christians will act and operate it differently. That the world will be better if instead of separating and turning away from people and trying to be away from them and being segregated from other people and trying to act like a group that is clean, a group that is morally okay, if we change that mentality, it will be a different world. It will be a different community. You and I will agree on that. So this for you, if you're a Christian, if you're a Christ follower, I want to just touch a story today that you can find that in John 4 and chapter 4. This story is about Jesus when he met with someone that he wasn't supposed to meet with someone that was rejected, somebody that he wasn't supposed to be close to. This story is about the whole chapter of John. John almost dedicated the entire chapter to this story. So let's get into the story. John chapter 4 verse 3 says, so he talking about Jesus, he left Judea and went back once more to Galilee. Now he had to go through Samaria. In reality, John says this, but Jesus didn't have to go through Samaria. This route was the shortest route from Judea to Galilee, but that was not the only way. The other route was through Perea, the east of the Jordan River. But in those days, the Jew had a problem with the Samaritan. So they rather take the long way instead of going through the shortest. But the reality is Jesus took this way because he had an encounter to make. In Jesus' days, the Jews, because of their hatred for the Samaritan, normally they took the eastern route in order to avoid those people. But Jesus chose the route through Samaria in order to reach the despised people of that region. As the Savior of the world, he seeks out and saves the despised and the outcast. That's good news. Because how many of us, maybe you that are watching now, you've been rejected, you've been despised, you're considered an outcast. But the Savior of the world, instead of going another route to avoid the Samaritan, he decided to go through in order to meet these people. It's amazing to know that. And then the story goes on and says, he came down to a town in Samaria called Sychar, near the plot of the ground Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there. Jesus tired. He was tired. He was human. As tired as he was from the journey, he sat down by the well, and it was about noon. He sat down like you and I when we sit at the table. He sat down. In this case, imagine the movie. It's 12 p.m. at noon. It's 12 p.m. It's hot, very hot. In those days, if you ever been in the Middle East, you know that it's very hot at 12 p.m. So why someone will go to the well at noon, in the hottest time of the day? Because maybe that person was embarrassed of something, you think? So Jesus comes at noon and sits down. Somebody comes, a lady, women come to get water at that time. My question is, why somebody will come in the hottest time of the day to get water? So the verse goes on and says, when a Samaritan woman came to draw water, Jesus said to her, will you give me a drink? Now, if you know the culture, if you know the context of the story, she was struck by how awkward this was, this situation here. Because Jesus is not supposed to even talk to her. At that time, if you see a woman, being that Jesus was a rabbi, if you see a woman getting close, you're supposed to get away. You're supposed to be away from her, as far away as possible. So the closer she got, Jesus stood there, and not only he was there, he actually spoke to her. It was awkward. She was struck by how awkward this was for her. The Samaritan woman said to him, you are a Jew. You are a Jew, and I am a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink? For Jews, and then John's like we didn't know, for us to know, he said, for Jews do not associate with Samaritan. Do not associate with Samaritan. So the woman is actually telling Jesus, you don't know that we don't belong here. We don't belong together. We don't belong in this conversation. You're not supposed to not even be close to me. She knew her place, what place of rejection she was already, and she was already setting herself for. But she didn't know that at this point, she wasn't just talking with anybody. She was talking with a different person. She was talking to Jesus. And that's the problem sometimes. Sometimes we've been so rejected in life that we not even let God come close to us, because we think that also God is trying to reject us. To what this, Jesus answered Jesus answered to this. Jesus answered to her, if you knew the gift of God, and who is it that asks you for a drink, you will have asked him, and he will have given you living water. In other words, I have something for you. Maybe others didn't have nothing for you, but if you knew who I am, you'd be asking me, because I have something for you. But at that moment, she's being so rejected that she doesn't know if there's anything in Jesus that might be of interest to her. So she changes and says the next, sir, the woman said, you have nothing to draw the water, and the well is deep. Where can you get this living water? Now she's interested. Now she's intrigued. Jesus answered, everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again. But whoever drinks the water I give them will never thirst. Indeed, the water I give them will become in them as a spring of welling up to eternal life. In other words, Jesus told her, I have something that you need. I have something that you wouldn't guess isn't available to you. But now that you will guess that, you will think that that is not available to you because of who you think you are. And that's where some people find right now. They've been so rejected in life that they think that God has nothing for them. But tell me, if you're watching for the first time, or for the first time in a long time, I want to remind you that God has something in Jesus for you that is available to you. That because of what you've been through, or whatever has happened in your life, all your background and your history, whatever you did, whatever was done to you, you think you don't deserve it. But Jesus told this woman, as he tells you today, there's something for you that is available for you. God is for you. Jesus is for you today. And he told her, go, call your husband and come back. I have no husband, she replied. There's a problem there, she said. I don't have a husband. I think that's the only reason why you're talking to me, is because you don't know my situation. You don't know my past. You don't know what I've been through. You don't know my mistakes. If you would have known who I am, you would not even try to talk to me right now. This woman didn't know who she was talking to. And Jesus told her, surprisingly, Jesus said to her, you're right when you say you have no husband. The fact is, you have had 5 husbands, and the man you are now have is not your husband. What you have just said is quite true. In other words, if you know the context of this situation here, back then, a woman didn't have the power to leave a man. The man always used to leave the woman. So basically, this woman has been in 5 relationships that rejected her, that threw her out, that separated her. She was a complete social outcast. This woman was ostracized and marked as immoral. An unmarried woman living openly with the 6 men in secret, in a series of 6 men This was stunning back then. The woman says, she tries to change the conversation. And she said, I know that the Messiah, called Christ, the Christ, is coming. And when he comes, he will explain everything to us. And for her surprise, she tried to change the conversation because she already saw like Jesus knew something she didn't know he knew. And now she tried to change the whole conversation. And then Jesus told her something that will change her life forever. And it might change yours too. Jesus says this. Jesus declared, I, the one speaking to you, I am he. This is the dramatic twist for this lady. This was a dramatic twist for her. Because in this moment, she's realizing that the person that is in front of her is the representation of God, telling her that she hasn't done something so bad for God to reject her. That she's valuable in God's eyes. The same thing with you. No matter how much you've been rejected, how many times that has happened, you're still valuable to God. You're worth his son. Jesus was demonstrating how God feels about all people. At this point, Jesus was showing his disciples that later comes, they were buying lunch, and now they come and they start criticizing in the background, and they said, Jesus doesn't know that if he will know this woman, he's not supposed to be talking to her. She's a Samaritan. He's supposed to reject her. But at this point, Jesus was demonstrating how God feels about all people. How God feels about you. To which later on, Paul writes in one of his letters. And he puts this in a way that it's amazing and stunning to me. And he says about Jesus that Jesus is the image of the invisible God. So if you want to see God, if you want to know how God is like, all you have to do is see how Jesus acted, what Jesus did, who Jesus hang out around, who was Jesus hanging out with, who was Jesus walking and eating with. If you want to know what God thinks of you, listen to Jesus. Listen to what he says and see what he does. Listen to the movie. This woman was supposed to be rejected. She was supposed to be, and this was supposed to be another encounter, another moment awkward for her. But instead of being another rejection, it became a salvation for her life. Instead of being something that she will be hurt once again, it was the moment that changed her entire life. Her today and her eternal life. At this moment, and we understand the next. Because sometimes we think we love people, but we pick and choose who to love. But when Jesus came to show us this. Jesus came to show us this. He came to show us that we really only love God as much as the person we love. I'm going to repeat that because this is so important that this stays with you. Jesus came to show us that we really only love God as much as the person that we love the least. We really only love God as much as the person we love the least. Think about that person right now that you don't like. Let me tell you something about that person that you don't like. The person that you don't like, God likes them. And if you don't like who God likes, I think you're in trouble. Like I said last week in one of my messages, the previous weeks, if you don't like my children's, that's going to make it very difficult for me to like you. And I think I get that. If you're a parent, you know this to be true. If someone doesn't like your children, you don't really like them either. But I ask, where do we get this behavior from? I think we learned it from God. If you don't like who God likes, I think you're in a little bit of trouble. Then the story goes on. And this is amazing because this is important. This after this woman knew that who was talking with her, John says, then leaving her water jar, meaning what she came for, she left it. because she found something greater. But this for you might mean nothing. For this woman, this meant whatever her life depended on, whatever her economy depended on, she left the water jar. And the woman went back to the town. She went back to the town and said to the people, come see a man who told me everything I ever did. And I'm going to add something because she didn't say it, but I'm going to add it because you and I know it. Come see a man who told me everything I ever did and didn't reject me. Imagine how your life will be if you experience the love of Christ. A love that it doesn't matter what you did, it still accepts you. But imagine even better for you that are a follower of Christ. If you accept people no matter what, no matter the color of the skin, no matter what group they belong, no matter if they're poor, if they're rich, because we are in a kingdom that acts upside down kingdom. It's an upside down kingdom. It's a kingdom that is opposite to the culture that we're in. Like Jesus says, you are in the world, but you're not of the world. She was amazed by this Jesus and told them, come and see a man who told me everything I ever did. And I add, and he didn't reject me. Could this be the Messiah? I ask you a question. How do you see others? As angry or as hurting? How do you see others? When you see people, how do you see them? Do you see them as angry or as people that are hurting? Because how you see people is how you treat people. I'm going to repeat that again. How you see me is how you treat me. If you see, because sometimes people are angry. They're acting on anger. I'm not going to excuse anger, but I'm going to tell you sometimes people are angry because they've been hurting. But how do you see them? How do you choose to see them? As angry or as hurting? And better, I'll ask you to consider, to be honest, to see. Be honest about your table. Be honest about the people that you let around you, that you let to sit around you. Be honest about the people that you welcome into your life. What type of people are those? Because if you are picking and choosing who comes to your table and sits with you and have a relationship with you and have a friendship with you, you might be not acting like Jesus. If you say, okay, this could be my friend, but this cannot, be honest about the people that you let in. Be honest about the people that you call friends. And I also invite you to determine what informs the boundaries of your table. Who do you not want to sit by on a plane? Today, determine what informs the boundary of your table. Meaning, determine right now what's going to be the condition for somebody to get close to me. Because for Jesus, it didn't matter who he was. If he was a human, it could sit on his table with him. All the way from a tax collector. If you don't know what that is, you're probably not very familiar with the Bible language. A tax collector is like an IRS agent that's not very welcome around your house. A tax collector was like a trader for those people. And Jesus was hanging out with them, eating with them, and he was all the way with a tax collector that was considered like a thief. He was eating with them. He was also sitting with all the people. It doesn't matter who they were. They could sit. They had a plate in Jesus' table. Who do you sit with? Who do you allow to sit next to you? Who do you hang out with? Be careful. Be careful if you're choosing to only show, if you're only choosing to show kindness to your kind. Because naturally we only want to be kind to the people that looks like us, that are our kind. I'm inviting you to broaden your circle, to find common ground with others, because that's what Jesus did. God himself became man and walked among us, and we saw the Son of God walking on earth, as John says, because God became man to be like us. because he liked us. Who do you like? And who you don't like? Ask yourself this question. What do I have to learn from these people? Activate some curiosity for the people that you're rejecting. Ask yourself. It doesn't matter if you, Victor, but I'm not a racist. I don't reject people of color. I don't reject white people. I don't reject black people. That maybe not that, but sometimes you don't hang around with another type of people, with people that has less money than you, the people that don't work in the job, that they don't make the same amount of money that you make, the people that don't speak your language, or the people that don't speak, they're not from your country. You don't hang around with them. Be careful. But ask yourself, what do I have to learn from this group of people? You know what? Something that I learned that I want to share with you is so powerful. Arrogant people don't ask questions. Arrogant people don't ask questions. Curiosity is a practice of humility. Arrogant people don't ask questions. Curiosity is a practice of humility. And if you ever need to confront somebody, I invite you to approach that person with love and concern. With love and concern. And if you want to invite people to your table, if you want to invite people into your life like Jesus did, it's important. You know why? Your view of God will be as small as the size of your table. You will see God depending how much people you have around. Your view of God will be as small as the size of your table. And better yet, your view of God gets bigger when you make room at your table. When you invite others, you will experience God. You will experience God in a whole different way. When you invite others into your life, when you accept people, no matter what, you will experience the love of God in a whole different way. It is said, I read about Mother Teresa. She was with a reporter, and the reporter was all day with her while she was taking care of sick people and doing what she does, what she used to do. And this reporter was doing a documentary on her life, and she was walking around with her all day. And at the end of the day, the reporter told Mother Teresa, she told her, God, how do you do it? How do you just pass the entire day cleaning people, and people that smells, sick people, people dying? How do you find so much strength to care for people? Doesn't that burdens you? That drain you? And Mother Teresa looked at her face to face and asked her, was that all you saw in them? Because what I saw was the face of Jesus. What I saw was the image of God. What I saw was somebody that needed love. What I saw was somebody that needed acceptance. What I saw was somebody that needed my love, that needed my help. And that is very fulfilling to me. Your view of God gets bigger when you invite others into your table. When you have compassion for others who are not in your bubble. When you show compassion and acceptance to others who doesn't belong to your circle, you will learn something about them, and you will learn something about yourself. Imagine what would have changed in your community, in your house, if we accept others as God in Christ has accepted us. And how do you do that? How you accept others? Next week, I'll talk to you about that. See you next time.